Okay, thank you everybody for joining us tonight on this annual webinar that we have with Herschel Welcher and myself, answering the shilas of Hilchos Pesach. Just as a public service announcement for those of you who live here in Queens, and if you don't, this Sunday, Mertz Hashem in Young Israel, Queens Valley, you can look up the address. We don't have it handy for this moment. Is on 77th Avenue here in Kew Garden Hills. We'll have the community kashering. Also, I think there is still. Okay, there's still time for I believe the Shemus in the area in Kew Garden Hills. I'm not sure if they're still there. And of course, people should remember to take care of their Mechiras Chametz, which we're going to talk about soon. Okay, I'm here tonight with Herschel Welcher. Sorry again. Sorry for the technical difficulties. We're here tonight with Herschel Welcher to discuss the halachas of Pesach. And we got a number of questions that came in this year, as usual. First of all, thank you, Herschel Welcher, for joining us.
Baruch Hashem, I have the opportunity to do so, and I'm very excited about it.
Okay, so there's a lot of questions that we had in previous years, but we'll have more questions this year that we haven't had before.
I do want to start off with one note of introduction. Now, this is, preparation-wise, obviously the most difficult of all the Yom Tovim. My perspective is that we've all lived in the generation when Balei Tshuva were a known phenomenon. A person becomes from, comes to the Rav, he says, Rabbi, make my house kosher. So everything in the house is non-kosher. The equipment is not kosher, the stoves, the ovens, the utensils, the dishes, everything is non-kosher. The food is non-kosher. So what does he have to do? The Rav comes, and everything has to be kosherized. The Rebbeinu Shalom says to us each year when Pesach comes that I don't want you to rest on your laurels. What you've accomplished until now is fine. But you have to enter new vistas. And vis-a-vis what you have to do in the coming year, it's as if everything was non-kosher until now. You're starting from scratch.
Wow. Yeah.
Starting from scratch. Throw it all out. Start again. This is the perspective that we have to have. And a very practical aspect of it is that every time that you take out a package of food, whether it be a can, a package, a box, a bag, whatever it may be, examine it before you use it to determine that it actually is kosher to Pesach. For many, many different reasons, mistakes are made by retailers, and they give products they're not supposed to. Mistakes are made by people. They pick up something in the non-kosher part of the Pesach store. They come to the kosher Pesach store, and they unload the non-kosher Pesach item in the Pesach section. And the next person unwittingly comes along and picks it up from the Pesach section and takes it home and uses it on Pesach. All types of reasons that these things happen. And I have a very famous horror story. I was a participant in it because the Shaila came to me. But those that come regularly to my pre-Pesach shir know that this is a feature of my shiring shir. That I received a call on the beginning of Chalamoid Pesach one year, and it had to do, Rav had a person as Kehila was a Shaila. They had ordered rolls of gefilte fish, frozen rolls of prepared gefilte fish, to use for the first days of Pesach. And they got 12, 15 of them. They put them into the freezer, and little by little, they made a number for the first days of Yom Tov. And after the first days of Yom Tov ended, they discovered that the fish that was delivered to them was not kosher to Pesach. And this is a serious problem, because it has matzah in it. It's a very, very serious issue.
Chametz the gematzah.
Chametz the gematzah, yeah. A person made all the effort to prepare for Pesach. It is overwhelming, the effort that goes into it. And here, because they didn't check that which they were going to use, and it was no fault of their own. Now, obviously, the person that sent it to them made a mistake, it was a Pesach order, and they gave them the wrong product. But they didn't check what they were using before they put it into use. They had major shilas. They ate chametz at the Seder. the kalim became chometzdik, it was a huge problem with what to do. Imagine the disappointment of the person that after all of that effort, they found the big chometz at the Seder. So I tell people all the time, every time you take out a package of food, look at it. And you'll be surprised how often you'll discover that sometimes it's a kidneyous product that shouldn't be there for Pesach. Sometimes it's actually a chometzdika Pesach, a chometzdika product. So this is one of the strongest suggestions I can make for one that wishes to fulfill the Chag properly. Every time you take out a package of food, before you open it, examine it to make sure that it has appropriate hashgacha.
Okay. Mit Hashem, people won't have horror stories this year.
As is Hashem.
Right. Okay. There's many shilas that came in this year. There's a lot of difficulties with the supply chain, as they say, and we found, just as a public service announcement, that there is many products that are missing chicken amongst them. So for those of you who are the latecomers to go shopping, I suggest you do shopping as soon as possible, so that you'll be able to have what you need for Yom Tov. A very interesting shiloh that came in is that I'm sure the Rav knows that there's Sfahan Azach Amazon.
Yes.
Maybe the Rav heard of it. I'm sure he did.
I see that trucks around the street.
Okay. So there's something called subscribe and save. Subscribe and save means that, Lamashal, let's say you want to get Pampers or diapers.
You have a standing order.
And you have a standing order, of course. So the standing order, a lot of people, I've received texts and emails that don't forget to cancel your subscribe and save. What happens, chas v'shalom, a person does a subscribe and save on chametz, cereal, there's all sorts of things he can get. I'm talking about chametz gomer. Let's take chametz gomer, the worst thing. And he forgets. And and it's paid for. It's right, there's a credit card on file. And now he received it on Yom Tov for Chol HaMoed. So what should he do?
This is really the most serious problem of chometz that we could have. Let's go through the problem from the beginning. I mean, let's say I'm a typical Jew, so I did Bedikas chometz, I did Bittul chometz, and I did Mechiras chometz. Now I find a piece of chometz under the couch. I find a roll under the couch on the first day, on a piece of cake, a Danish. What am I supposed to do with it? And the answer is, don't take me in the wrong way, but contrary to what you read in Shulchan Aruch, that you should cover it on Yom Tov and burn it after Yom Tov, Mitzad Adin, what you're supposed to do is cover it on Yom Tov, and Chol HaMoed comes, put it away in the closets that have the chometz. Since we sold all our chometz to a non-Jew, it's the non-Jew's chometz. The one of us go to the closets in which we've placed the chometz before Pesach that we sold to the non-Jew, and take it out and burn it in Chol HaMoed. So we have one less kinyan, perhaps. We don't have kinyan chotzer. Maybe we did have kinyan chotzer in this case. Question. But we have many kinyanim. So we tzaradin, all that's necessary is to put it away in the closet where the rest of the chometz is. I did find, and I'm still trying to cheshbon out why exactly it's true. I have an idea, but I don't know. There's apparently a tshuva or a psak of Rav Shmuel Levi Vozhno Zatzal, which was a chisi to be one of his talmidim. And he gave a heter to burn the chometz if you find it on Chol HaMoed. But that's a heter. Mitzad Adin, you don't have to do that. Now the problem is that
it belongs to the guy also.
It belongs to the guy. So he had a heter that was allowed.
Belongs to the guy.
So they were allowed to burn.
And you're burning his chometz.
Whatever the reason, I'm not sure why. I didn't see it. The reason appended. I have my own svaros why he might have said that. Mm-hmm. However, this all applies to chometz, which I held before Pesach. Chometz which is delivered to me on Pesach, so there was no bittul on it. There's no mechiras chometz on it. And I'll come back in a moment to the issue when there's no mechira. Remind you about Yud Gimel, please.
Yes, we'll get there.
And consequently, it's a serious problem. However, I don't believe that I have any kinyan in this chometz on Pesach when it comes. I mean, even though I may have paid for it, but I certainly don't have das to be kind of the chometz until it comes to me. For example, if the chometz gets lost, I'm going to go to Amazon and tell them they have to make good on it. So if they shipped my chometz and my chometz got lost in shipment, it would be my problem. So apparently, I don't think there's das to be kind of the chometz before the chometz actually arrives. They put it on my porch. I certainly don't want my porch to be kind of. So I think the best thing to do is just to take it and throw it into a public garbage can. And that's all. We're done with it. I don't think that one is obligated. If you want, you could burn it, that you could also do to destroy it. But I think it should suffice just to throw it into a public garbage can because of the fact that I don't own it yet.
So if a person says, I don't know, if you can't say I don't own it, and let me bring it into my house, and I'll take kinyan after Yom.
But that's a very,
because then you're showing.
First of all, it may actually be a kinyan that he wants it. At the very least, as a geder, it's apparently from my reading in Masechta Avodah Zarah, it's a machlekes of Rashi and the other Rishonim. How far? There's a geder of roitza b'kiyumo. By Yisur Hano, if you want something to be around, there's an Isur. If this only applies to Avodah Zarah, Rashi talks about it in the context of Avodah Zarah, Masechta Avodah Zarah, and maybe Chometz goes into that realm too. Other Rishonim seem to have a broader view that it applies to all Isurei Hano, and I believe that that's the position of the Shulchan Aruch. So certainly by Chometz, less man we get a roitz of a kiyumo. So one certainly would not be allowed to bring it into one's house and on Pesach. So one should just take it off one's property and put it out on the street, or put it in a public garbage can someplace, and that's it. One cannot give it away to a non-Jew either, because that's also deriving Hano from it. As it says, I can't take Chometz and even feed it, forget to a person who has a Karas HaTov, even to an animal who doesn't have a Karas HaTov, I'm not allowed to feed it, because I get pleasure from giving it to an animal. Now, the question of having Chometz, which was not covered by the Mechiras Chometz, is a very serious question. Now, those, for example, that go to Eretz Yisrael and they sell the Chometz on Yud Gimel, you have to be very, very careful, because I'm selling the Chometz here in the United States a day before, because by the time I sell the Chometz on Erev Pesach here, let's say at 11 o'clock in the morning, it's after the Zman Isa Chometz at Eretz Yisrael. That it means, so I'm going to sell the Chometz on Yud Gimel. They still going to want to eat Chometz. So they're going to buy Chometz and own Chometz, which is not included in the Mechiras Chometz. Now, if they forget to get rid of that Chometz, there's no Mechiras Chometz on it. And just don't say that, well, I did bittul if I did the second bittul, because the Shulchan Aruch says in Siman Tov Mem Ches, based on a Rishalmi, that a person that did bittul and he didn't do anything else, the Chometz is also b'hano after Pesach. So apparently this is certainly not the position one wants to be in. So consequently, if you're one of those that does the Yud Gimel sale, to be very, very careful about Chometz that you might retain after that for use on the 14th, to make sure you get rid of it before the Zman Isa.
So
now, I just want to add one thing. That's one of the reasons I'm very reluctant to some people. There's a machlekes achreinim. If I want to be exempt from bittul and I'm not going to be home and I rent the apartment to a non-Jew, when the rental has to take place. There are those that many say that it has to take place on Yud Gimel, before the Zman of the B'dikas Chometz. Some Sofer, however, paskins that it suffices as long as even on Yud Dalet I rent it out. So that means, since I know that I'm not going to have it in my Rishus on Pesach, so I don't have to do B'dikas Chometz there. And many want to be machmir to do Mechiras Yud Gimel. And I generally will not do that Mechiras Yud Gimel for them. Because it's going to happen is they're being machmir in the din of B'dikas Chometz, and I'm being mekel in the din of Bayiro Bayimotzi. And I'm not willing to take the responsibility for that. So to the largest extent, those that come to me that they want to do Mechiras Yud Gimel because of B'dikas Chometz, I tell them no, it's a bad idea. Because any Chometz that you might forget, and certainly in a rabbin there are people that are going to forget Chometz, are going to have a problem by your by Yimotzi.
So if I understand the Rav correctly, the Mechiras Yud Gimel only helps you. Let's say Yud Gimel this year is Wednesday night, so just for the layman, if a person is going to sell their Chometz Wednesday night
or Thursday morning,
he's neglected to take care of the Chometz that's coming into his possession afterwards.
Or he's retaining in his possession to eat.
So that leads me to the next question, which the Rav was meramis to, but I think people might find this interesting. So then here's my question. We have in our house and everybody's house in the world, even after the mechira is done, let's say by the Rav, there's still a little bit of chametz still around. The fact that you go to the beer chametz and you sell right. There's a lot of time the Rav finishes the mechira before the people go to do and beer chametz.
I do my own
Right.
Mr. Beer Chametz
very
is
good.
always after the mechira.
Oh, so you're still retaining that you still own.
Right,
There is some chametz.
That chametz, I certainly was mevatel because I'm intending to burn it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no question that if it remained, it would be boking. There would be no bayimotze problem. And eventually it'll get burned up. If a few crumbs or something remained of it, certainly there was bittul on it. But one has to be careful.
Well, what happens if interesting shaila also came up? What happens if a person does a mechira gimel? Let's say he does do the mechira gimel. He sells on Gimel Nisan, and what the intention is that he's not going to do it right. He's not going to do a bedikas chametz, or he's not going to do a bedika with a bracha. As we know, a person that is going away, he's going to Eretz Yisrael or he's going to Orlando. People go to Ken Orlando these days.
I heard such a thing.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. In Queens, I don't know if we know what it is. But so interesting shaila was asked of me, and I said I'd bring it up. Now that the Rav is going to talk about it later. A person is always going anywhere. He makes a mechira gimel, and with the intention that he's going to drive, he's going to get out by Yudalit, because we know that the chiyuv, the dika, the tzchal, the bracha is leil Yudalit. So now, in some houses in the Klal Yisrael, I don't know, I heard also that 1 hour turns into 6, and what you thought you were going to leave Thursday afternoon, your gimel afternoon, now already you got into your dalit after this month, but already you did a mechira. So by you getting delayed to leave,
No, it doesn't change the fact. It's not his reshus. The halacha is whoever possesses the reshus, or possesses the property, or the use of the property,
right?
On Leil Yudalit, when this one comes, that determines his chayvus. This person already no longer had it in his possession, legally,
Right.
from Yud Gimel, so he would be exempt.
I also was asked the following question, and maybe I think I didn't know the answer, but I think it's kedai to tell everybody. A person goes to Orlando, he goes to Eretz Yisrael, he goes to a hotel, he goes on Yom Tif or even Chol Hamoed. When he gets there Chol Hamoed to the venue, is there a chiyuv b'dika?
He certainly has a chiyuv b'dika, because there's no question. I've spoken to people, and it's in my personal observation during the year. I've never been in a hotel on Pesach.
Yeah.
Never was a guest in a hotel on Pesach. Baruch Hashem. Amen. But I do ask people. I have people that are in the hotel industry that I deal with, and from my own personal observations during the year, there's a need to do bedikas chametz. One cannot assume that the room is 100% devoid of any chametz for a number of reasons. First of all, the worker may have left a sandwich over there. Secondly, the hotels make business. They have all types of little snacks that they put out in your room that they sell for some exorbitant price. If you want to buy them, then you're going to come there and you're going to have chametz laying around in your room. It may very well be all types of snacks that are chametz. Now, since they're not our chametz, we don't have to destroy them, but at least we'd have to cover them up, so we have to be aware of them. So we have to be sure that there is no chametz lying around. Obviously, that's a bedika without a bracha.
Right, because the chiyuv b'dika is on
only leil yudal. It's interesting when we pass in halacha that if a person didn't do the bedika, is just going to do the actual beer on Erev Yom Tif, there's a shayla nachreinim if you can make a bracha. But l'maisa we pass not to make a bracha, only on the bedika.
Let's say a person, it's really an older star mechiris, but a person has stock in a company, and he doesn't know mutual funds, or he has all sorts of stocks. He doesn't know necessarily it's chametz. So is that something he even has to sell?
Well, this is a machlokes about this. The question is owning stock. If I own stock in General Mills, so General Mills is in the chametz business.
Safe to assume.
Yes. So consequently, and I own 100 shares of General Mills in my retirement account. So, am I in violation of owning chametz on Pesach? And this is a question. It's a question of Achrayim. And Ramosha Zatzal had a very interesting psak. And since Ramosha was both the Godel Ador and one of the Asra of America, so in this country at least we should follow his psak. And Ramosha said, it depends. Do I have enough shares that if I sneeze, they take notice of it? If you own enough shares, Elon Musk said that he has almost 10% of Twitter now, and it's going to go up to 14.5%. So when he sneezes, they shake. That's considered ownership.
Many people would say you should burn Twitter with the
Well,
chametz.
maybe that's whatever. That's a different shiloh. That's an example of what ownership is. But having
That he has a day.
he has a day. When he says something, they have to listen. If I own enough shares that they have to be mischashev, to take account of my day, my view, then I'm considered an owner. But if I'm owning 100 shares or 1,000 shares, where it makes no difference to them, that can't claim, that's not considered ownership. And Moshe said one does not have to sell it. But in fact, the shtar mechira that I use does mention that it includes those shares in the mechiras chametz.
I know we're spending time with mechiras chametz. I want to ask some more questions if it's okay on this topic. Many times, you'll find that a person thinks that he's selling all the chametz that's listed on the shtar. It's in my house, in the garage, in the basement, and then quite often, if a person owns, let's say, people that own apartments somewhere else, or they own apartments in Florida, or a person for some reason he had chametz in another place that he forgot about. It happens. A person had maybe he left it by. He left something by his sister's house in Lakewood, or he left something in whatever. In other words, he's not always mitchashev in everything that he owns where the chametz is.
So let me tell you two things about this. Number one, there are varied practices among the Rabbanim. If one should be very specific about which chametz is being sold and where the chametz is. Now, the problem that the Achronim have is if one is overly specific in terms of where the chametz is, and I say in this closet, in this closet, in this closet, it may imply that I'm only selling chametz in those places. If I have chametz elsewhere, it's not in the sale. Others say there is no such implication. And in the shtar that I use states that chametz that's anywhere else other than the listed places is also included, to be clear that there is no implication that the sale is limited. And to the contrary, I discourage people from listing more than the address. And it's because, as Rabbi Schwartz said, maybe don't forget the cabinet in the basement, which has all types of chametz in it. And then I'm going to be back into the Shiloh of Dachreinim if it worked or not. So I prefer it to be general, and then as a catch-all phrase, and any other chametz in any other place, wherever it may be, is sold.
But certainly a person should have in mind
yes.
And he should realize what's in the shtar. He should.
Yes.
Okay, let's get into products. So we have the Algermain Shaila every year. Everybody has it. It just becomes more and more acute every single year. Medicines, cosmetics, toiletries, and acutely this year, and I think we've discussed it in the past, vitamins. Vitamins have become a very big albatross in Kashrus and for Pesach. I'll just give a hakdama that as people become more and more health aware, more and more shilas of vitamins come up during the year that people get from all sorts of places. I'm in the presence of the Rav, so I'm not going to paskin anything, but I think I'm right in saying that vitamins, just stop taking vitamins. I'm not talking about for a health situation that a person needs it for refuah. Just in order to help out this system or that system, it seems that people are not aware that they have to be makbid on the kashrus of vitamins, if that's correct.
This is an old machlokes. What's the ends to take on vitamins if one has to be makbid on the kashrus or not? If they're hard, like a hard gelatin pill or a hard tablet, then b'tzara din one's allowed to take them. There are principally two aterim to take medicines. Right, one is in Yoredea Chelik Aleph and one is in Yoredea Chelik Beis. In Yoredea Chelik Aleph we have that if something is kosher to eat, if it no longer has a food grade, it's totally dried out, so it loses its treif status in that fashion. That's halacha in Yoredea Chelik Aleph. And Chelik Beis, it happens to be it's in the halachos of Avodas Kechavim, but there's a halacha which specifically addresses medicines, and it states that if a medicine is considered shaloi kederach achila, and it's b'mokum chayli, so one is permitted to take such a medicine. So, but that's only mutter b'mokum chayli. Now, for example, in the soft gel caps, which are very common, and the gelatin is at food grade in those gelatin caps. And I spoke at length years back with Rabbi Chaim and Shlita about this, and he gave me a very strong psak, and that's really very well rooted in the Shulchan Aruch and Hilchos Avodas Kochavim, that if there's no other product which is available to treat that illness, and it's an illness that a person needs to take care of, then he's allowed to take a medicine based on the fact that it's shaloi k'derech achila. But if there's another medicine available, or it's not really an illness, then he's not allowed to take such a medicine. So this is, we really need to take into account, because this has really slipped through the cracks. The soft gel caps are a very, very serious shaila, and one should not be taking them without asking his Rav if, according to the circumstances of his condition, it's appropriate to be taking them. The hard capsules are really they're mutter mitzaradin, and based on Yerodei Chelet Aleph, they would also be mutter for vitamins too. There are those that hold that on vitamins, since there's not a medical necessity for it, and maybe they're more comfortable with the heter of shaloi k'derech achila, so one should be machmir. This is an old machlekes.
What about Pesach?
In Pesach, I would tell people to stay away from it. You know, it's not very. We're dealing with a person that doesn't have an illness, is not taking it because there's a condition that he has to ameliorate, and consequently, Pesach comes once a year. For the 7-8 days of Pesach, when we're taking it for something which is not defined by anyone as an illness. There's no known condition. I think that we can survive 7 or 8 days of Pesach and without getting involved with that child.
What about, of course, people that take medicines, whatever their medicines are, heart medicine,
those take medicines for serious conditions, such as heart medicines, medicines for blood pressure, etc. They're obligated to take those medicines, and if they have some reason they think they're supposed to be machmer, then they have to go to a Pesach muvik to ask them if they have any right to be machmer. I mean, some medicines, if a person takes them, and I discussed this with Dr. Goldstein Olav Hasholem. I mean, if one stops taking them, one's literally putting one's life in danger. And this, cannot be taken lightly. So a person who takes medicine for a serious condition, it's also al pidin to stop taking it until he's done a consultation with a physician at a Pesach.
Now, what about the age-old question of shampoos?
Rabbi said all the shampoos and all of these things really are totally mutter to use on Yom Tov. I reference, there's a statement by the Chicago Rabbinical Council, and you can find it at askcrc.org, and at that site there is a statement about medicines, cosmetics, and toiletries for Pesach that they issued a number of years ago, and it was reissued for this year, Pesach Tavshin Pei Beis, and I reference that. Go look for it online, and you will get a very detailed answer to the question.
Okay, let's move along. One person asked a question about a detailed thing, a moisturizing cream that contains oats.
A moisturizing cream that contains oats. So according to what the Chicago wrote in the Chicago RCRC, that all of these things, all varieties of blush, body soap, conditioners, creams, eyeshadow, eyeliner, foundations, ink, lotions, mascara, etc., are permitted regardless of the ingredients contained within them. So that answers the question. That's according to the Psak's Mutter.
Okay. We got a question this year about Purell. Is a person allowed to use Purell? I remember 2 years ago when we started this the Corona, the Magefra.
Yeah.
I remember at the time that the Rav was reluctant, but felt that it was okay then to be matrit. What would the Rav say about now? Alcohol.
Again, I don't. Every person has to consult with his doctor. My degree is in rabbinics. I didn't go to medical school. From the known information, we now know what we didn't know 2 years ago, that touch is not the means of transmission of COVID-19. We were concerned at the time. And, in life we have to learn from the things that are learned and go forward and not be hung up about the things that we thought were true and have been proven by the world of medicine to be not true. So mitzad adin, since anything with denatured alcohol is certainly worth staying away from, so your Purell we should also be staying away from. I understand there's denatured alcohol in it. But as I said, if someone has a particular reason that his doctor is telling him that he has to do it, that's between him and the doctor. But as I said, one should really think seriously about how necessary it is, based on the fact that the world of medicine has concluded that this is not the means of transmission of this disease.
Okay, there are two questions in the comments. Let's go back to Mechira's comments. Can one buy and sell stocks for pharmaceutical companies that might be chametz? So I guess he's trading in a specific, let's say a Pfizer or something.
The answer is that one should not be trading in things. As I said, we gave a heter beforehand to say that one is not necessarily over, but we do our machmer to sell the shares that one has. To buy shares on Pesach, one should stay out.
Yeah. Okay, someone sent the question, they joined late, they don't know if this was addressed. I don't know if we directly addressed it. We may have. We'll just go for, she just joined. Someone's going away for Pesach and someone will be using their house for Yom Tov. Does anything other than putting away the chametz and labeling and such need to be done? I guess you have to clean the house. Also, does the whole house have to be Pesach? Or could just the rooms that are being used be cleaned and checked?
The answer is, if a rishus is being used on Pesach, the Balei HaTosfos wrote at the beginning of Masechet Pesachim, in the very first Tosfos, that the institution of Bedikas Chametz is to make sure that we don't come to eat Chametz on Pesach. So we may not have Chametz around. And consequently, any rishus which is used, we have to be sure that there's no Chametz around. Now, if I'm going into someone else's house and I'm not going to use the closets, so I don't have to clean the closets out. Maybe there should be some siman on them indicating that they're not, these are non-kosher Pesach things here. But the open areas of the house have to be checked that there's no chametz around. And it's the room, if a room is not going to be used, and I'm not using it, it's not a hallway, I'm not going through it, so I just put a siman on that room not to enter that room, and that could be included in the mechiras chametz that the person did. But the rooms which are being used, any rooms that a person is going through, have to be clean. Now, if he's not using the stove, so put some siman on the stove, put aluminum foil on the stove, and put a label on it, not for Pesach, and that would be fine.
Okay, the next question is, someone sent in about kashering. We discussed this in the past, but like the Rav said at the beginning, that we have to start all over again. This phenomenon in Orlando, which I've seen on my own, I've seen these houses. I was there a couple of during Corona. We were there for a week or two, and maybe a little longer. But they all have glass stoves. In Orlando and all these places that people rent out, they all have glass stoves, glass stove tops. I'm sorry. So the question is, can you kasher it? And if you can't, can it be used? What's the mechanism? And also, I guess the next question I'll ask is about a non self-clean oven. So I guess we'll take it one.
Okay, so let's go one by one. Glass. There are more paskins that were in Hilchos Pesach. They don't kasher glass for Pesach. There's a dispute if glass is considered like earthenware, which the Ramos machmer like on Pesach. Does the Ramos mean to be machmer like this the whole year, according to Minhag Ashkenazim, or only for Pesach? And there's a dispute amongst it. Different poskim about this. My personal Kabbalah is that it only applies to Pesach. This Chumrah doesn't apply to the rest of the year. And there's a raya from Rav Yodah Mitzvah and Kufay to this effect. So that's my personal view on the matter. But for Pesach, we do clearly, according to Ashkenazic, Sfardim have a different psak, but according to the Ashkenazim, we do not kasher glass for Pesach. Now, consequently, the glass top stoves have to be divided into two parts. There's the part which is directly where the pot is put.
The coils.
Yeah, where the coils are covered. That is heat directly under it. Now, the basic psak is, why do we use the same stove top, the same grate for milchik inflations on our ovens? So the psak of the Achronim is because anything that boils over burns up, and there are no blias in such a grate. And the Chavetz Chaim discusses another heta that maybe it's in the realm of two kederis, shaila, whatever, based on the Taz and the Shach, in two places in Yeridea. But the Ramah tells us, for whatever reason, we have a chumrah that we do kasha, so we do some form of libun kal on grates in for Pesach. So good. So hayos that it's only a chumrah, and mitzad adin it's not necessary. So one can kasher it however one would kasher any other grate before Pesach. The problem is in the rest of the stovetop. Now what happens if we clean stovetops for some reason? Well, so it would seem that things spill on them. And let's say I have a pot and something spills on it under it. Now we Ashkenazim have another problem. In Siman Tov Mem Zayin, Sif Yud, the Mechaber Paskins that Noisen Tam of Gam is mutter, meaning a pot which hadn't been used for 24 hours and I cooked it, and on Pesach the food is mutter. There are more in there in Sif Yud, Tov Mem Zayin Sif Yud, there are more as Machmer for the Ashkenazim, that we're Machmer even for Noisen Tam of Gam. So that means if it was used ever for chametz before, and certainly within the last year if it was used for chametz, and there's some liquid, and there's liquid in between that surface and the pot will become chametz stick, and it will be of no avail that it's been more than 24 hours that it hasn't been used. And the problem with glass top stoves is you cannot cover the glass top. I went to visit one of my Chassidish friends in Borough Park and bought a glass top. And I came Sunday to visit him a number of years back, and lo and behold, he shows me, he put a blech on it, and his glass top was something, it was now between 1,000 and 3,000 pieces. It just plots, disintegrated from the heat. It's not made to be covered, so one cannot cover it. So there's a question if one leaves so a small number of holes, if it's going to crack or not crack, that I leave for people to figure out. There's also supposed to be some type of material that you can put on it, which on one hand will keep the pots from touching it, on the other hand, which is not flammable. It's supposed to be such a type of material. So but other than that, the glass tops I find very, very problematic, and I certainly recommend that people not buy them if you're going to wind up using them on Pesach.
There is a product out there where you can get like a metal disc and put it on top. Would that be better?
Metal disc.
It's like a disc, something that.
Where to put it by the burner part.
Yeah, in other words, it looks like this, but
no,
it'd be empty in the middle.
That doesn't concern me because, as I said, the nothing happens there anyhow. Mm-hmm. So whatever, we don't have to be machmer chumrah on a chumrah. The Ramah is a chumrah, and now there's another chumrah that they have to kasher it. But the question is what one does with the rest of the stovetop. That's my trouble. I'm not pleased with what has become acceptable.
So it's better that one shouldn't do it, shouldn't use it. Is that the?
One should not use a glass top stove for Pesach.
Should try to come up with a different eitzah.
Yes.
Okay, let's go back to where we were. All right, fine. Next child. A person bought maybe one of our stores, or maybe a different store. He bought raw meat, not ground, not spiced, raw poultry or beef months ago, and it was in the freezer frozen. Is there a way that he could use it on Pesach?
The answer is that it depends on one particular factor. The problem is the following. Really, meat should be kosher to Pesach a whole year. It's raw. And just rinse it off in case before you're going to use it at the most. Right. That's the most you should have to do, and it should be kosher to Pesach. The problem arises because many of the butchers in the large markets today prepare the meat in the same kitchen in which they make the prepared food. And consequently, there are all types of chametz ingredients flying around in that area. Now, if that's the case, we don't know what else might have gotten mixed in on the tables, etc., where the meat was, and that could present chametz problems on Pesach. Yeah. Now, if you have a store where the meat processing area and the kitchen are in two places, then it's fine. if you get, for example, a chicken which came straight from like the KJ chickens, which come in a bag, closed, all the way from the slaughterhouse, so they're also not a problem. So if you had such type of chickens or meat that you bought in a place where there's no question of cross-contamination between the chometz chicken food preparation and the meat or chicken preparation, then you could use them on Pesach, assuming that your package is well closed. I would rinse off the outside of the package and probably want to rinse off what's inside when I take it out, but it's mutter to use.
So that would be the same.
Now, ground products, none of the hashgachos are matter, because of the fact that we're not careful during the year necessarily to avoid even a chash mashu, maybe a mashu of chometz was there and we didn't pay attention to it.
Right. Now, what about, so that would be the same thing if a person goes to Costco. We get this question all the time. People buy fresh salmon at a discounted price at Costco or Restaurant Depot, wherever it might be.
Yeah, the fresh salmon I don't see a problem with. The most I would recommend them to do is to rinse it off before they use it. It's certainly not prepared. It's a raw item. It's not prepared in a place where cooked food comes from.
Uh-huh. So then if a person washed it off,
it certainly would be mutter.
so someone asked
And
me,
probably if a person is in a shas of chak, that they had no other chicken or meat to use, I would tell them to take the meat that they got there and defrost it and wash it off and use it.
So someone did ask me, Alam, they want to know about the Kedei Klipa. We know that a person sometimes you have to, you don't have to take a knife and
Listen, the question is, if there is some question, if a meat has cracks in it, even if it's raw, and chometz trace stills on it, and it goes in the ashidis rishayim that are machmer. It's a question the whole year what the din is, but certainly on Pesach, we'd want to be machmer like that.
The question came up again this year. It comes up every year about not to get into shalom bayis issues necessarily, but really how far does a person have to go in cleaning the house, cleaning the svarim, behind the fridge, behind the ovens? I'll just tell the Rav a short story. Maybe I said this once when I was living in Eretz Yisrael. I was in Vermont in Mattersdorf. I had this close to live across the street from Rav Scheinberg, and Rav Scheinberg gave a shiur in English to the women, and he said, "You don't have to pull out the fridges, and you don't have to get behind." And the ladies said, "Rav Scheinberg doesn't know the halacha." That was the.
Listen, I always say, I believe it's in the Rosh, if I recall correctly, in Pesachim, there's a Rosh that discusses the fact that the women used to wash the walls before Pesach. And the Rosh defends them from based on a Rishalmi. It's a very difficult tushtel, a very far-fetched tushtel from our standpoint. But Alpha Pecan, this is...
I'm talking about mitzad halacha. If a person...
Mitzad halacha...
A person didn't do it and...
Mitzad halacha... As Rav Moshe Feinstein said, that's Pashtis Hasugya, even though in Machne Yisrael was Machmer in this prat, but he might have been only Machmer because he was writing to soldiers that had chometz all around him. And in, I think, Toflam and Gimel in the Sharatzian, he's also making like Rav Moshe. And basically, Rav Moshe says, Poshep Shar in the Gemara Pesachim is that Perura Mamela Batle means that you don't have to do, but there's no bedikas chometz for them because they're bottled, they're insignificant. Nobody would think of picking them up, and there's no bedikas chometz on them. Right. And Rav Moshe writes that we're only looking for a piece. It doesn't have to be a kazayas, but it has to be big enough that I might pick it up to eat it. So consequently, all the things in the backs of the chairs, with the crack in the back of the chairs, if you want to clean it, it's fine. I have a proposal, but I guess I have to get a publicity agency to actually actualize this. I want to make National Jewish Spring Cleaning Day on May 15th, but not before Pesach. But one day we all, everyone will hire, the help. We'll have 7 people come to help clean the house, and we'll make sure there's not a crumb left. It's the commercial kashering. It's an amazing thing, but I've had many times non-Jews tell me, especially in the healthcare industry where the government comes to check them, he says, wow, the way these rabbis kosherize the place, we never see that, you never saw the place so clean. Before the government inspectors come, we should have them come back over and do the job again.
Yeah, for the survey.
Yeah.
Back to Mechiras Chometz, it occurred to me just sitting in our office over here. So I'm looking at Chometz right now. What's the chiyuv of a person that has chometz in their office the person has chametz. Personally, we come back during Chol Hamoed to do some work. And make sure the Rabbanim know that I'm here when maybe it's just to escape the family meeting, the family trip. But what's the chiyuv of a person like Abe his office, or if he's going to come back, if he's not going to come back?
A person's going to come back,
and let's say he can't come back, Leil Yadalit, or
if a person, at the very least, the person has to cover up the chametz in his office, and he does mechiras chametz on it. And if he's not going to be able to do bedikas chametz on the Yidaladi, at the very least, he should rent out the parts of the office that have the chametz, cover up the chametz,
right.
And then Al Pidin will be allowed to come there. Now, I should mention, there's a Haggadah that they put out a number of years, it's out 10 years about, maybe a little more than that, with Psokim of Rabbi Yosef Tzadik Levrocha. And he writes that if you clean the room, and even if a non-Jewish cleaning help cleaned the room, and you looked it over afterwards, after they cleaned it, like as they cleaned, to see that there's no chametz there, and you were makbid not to bring in chametz in the remaining days until Pesach, there's no chiyuv b'dikas chametz in such a room. As a cheskes boduk, it's a little bit. I think the buchacha was, I think, the one that was started with this, but this is a Yosef's psak.
Mm-hmm. We just got a few more questions here on the comments back what we said before. I think I know the answer to this, but I'll ask this: can somebody use spices or anything that is kosher Pesach that is already open and been used during the year?
The Furish, the Shulchan Aruch says that whatever was used during the year, any open package of food should not be used on Pesach. That's the Furish did it in Mechaber.
Okay, back to the kashrim. Zuma, I don't know who you are. Going back to that, if using the cloth cover that they have for cooking, there's a cloth cover that they sell that you can cook with that and put that on top of the glass. It conducts the heat. Is there a problem using the same one for both milk and meat? Also, to clarify, the purpose of the metal disc is so any liquid spill over, it won't touch the pot. Is that okay to use?
It's okay to use, but it's not necessary. Because the same reason that we're not makbid a whole year, we're not makbid on Pesach. Now, I would think that lechatchila one should have different cloths for melachits and fleishiks.
During the year?
No, he has. If he wants to use these cloths, he says that they sell.
Even during the year, I'm asking.
Yeah, even during the year.
Nothing to do with Pesach.
Nothing to do with Pesach. But during the year, no one has to bothers to put down these cloths, to leave it open.
Right.
But on the whole year was Samech declares it's not Boleya. Mm-hmm. But in Pesach, when we're machber like the Ramah, then it would be a good idea to have a separate one for milachos and fleishiks.
Okay. Just one more question over here. A couple more questions. The many people have a misconception about kitnius. Not getting into kitnius and ishtana, but kitnius, which we know, I don't know in English. I don't really know what the word is. But legumes, they say.
Legumes, but legumes. It's not only. It's hard really to classify. I don't think rice should be classified as a legume.
Right.
And mustard, I'm skeptical if it's classified as a legume. Beans are legumes.
Right. So someone asked me today, turmeric and all these things. They saw that it had a regular hashgacha for Pesach. Turmeric and I forgot what it was, cumin, all these things.
The cumin, I know there's machlekes about. There was one year in one of the national organizations that in the back of the book there was an article why cumin is kitnius, and in the front of the book there were hashgachas from that organization giving cumin. So cumin there's some machlekes about, and there are varying views about cloves. I mean, apparently I understand at least in the Chassidish or in the Ungarische world they don't use cloves. Cloves for some reason got classified together with kitnius, but me'idach disa, there is from one of the major hashgachas. If you ask their people, they'll tell you they don't like to give hashgacha on it because they don't use it.
Right.
But there happens to be, for example, cloves. There's one job that provides for nursing homes that actually has cloves for Pesach with the hashgacha of one of the national organizations. You won't find it because it's only a commercial product in nursing homes, but it's made by a jobber, obviously. So ask your own Rav if you want to use any of these minim, what's in the realm of kitnius. And this is whatever. There were a lot of machlekes, and my personal view is I share the view of those that don't feel that quinoa goes into the realm of kidneys. And the cottonseed oil is widely used here in the United States.
Right.
In Eretz Yisrael, they consider it kidneys.
Right.
Now, it's interesting because this was Mekubal, both the Satmar, the Chassidish world used it, and the real Litvish world used cottonseed oil also. And it happens to be people don't realize where does the heter in our world come from, in the non-Chassidish world.
Right.
The heter is from Chaim Brisk. I have a list of Brisker coolers, and this is one it's not a long list, but I collect Brisker coolers. I collect Brisker coolers. And this is one of them. Chaim said that the Xeris kidneys only applies when the item from which which produced the kidneys is used in and of itself. But if we only use the extract and we don't use the min itself, it's not shach Xeris kidneys. So since by the cotton we don't eat, so there's no Xeris kidneys on the cottonseed oil. This is Rav Chaim Brisk's Chiddush.
Wow. Okay. I'll learn something new every year. This is amazing. Maybe one or two last shadows about the Seder. I was discussing with someone recently. This is really for the Mahadrim. Right till now, I think we were talking about the Me'ikra and the Mahadrim. So some people tell me that for the Alak Kaisis they want to use the best wine and the most meshubach wine. Then personally, I personally use Rashi Light, which is a lower alcohol, and it really helps you get through the Seder. Because the first kais has the kiddush, which is the raisa, which is also the first kais. Is there a hiddur? Does the Rav feel that there's a hiddur in having a yayin meshubach for the first? Should a person be mahader for the first kais to be for the yayin meshubach for the? Or if it's going to give him a headache, he's not going to be able to feel this.
If a person will not be able to conduct the Seder properly because he's sensitive to the alcohol, then there should be mamayit in the amount of alcohol that he ingests. Friday night at least, Friday night I certainly would be sympathetic that a Friday night kiddush, as we have with the first Seder this year, to use a yayin that's more meshubach because it's a mitzvah d'oraisa, as we should every Friday night. Now, what also happens to be there's a chumrah of Rav Moshe. And the Gemara talks about that there are two dinim, brisk, in Arba Kaisis. The Gemara says Yidei Yayin and Yidei Cheres. So Yidei Yayin means that you drank 4 Kaisis. But the question is what Yidei Cheres means. So Rav Moshe was a person of the real world. And Rav Moshe said, you don't make a l'chaim on grape juice. You take out some bottle of schnapps and you make. So alcohol is what you make a l'chaim on. And he says, therefore, the celebration of Cheres has to be with something alcoholic. My personal view is I strive to get for people that if they want to be Mekayim this din, I really prefer 6%, but somebody wants it at 5.5%, and it's a chumrah, so I tell them it's 5.5%. And the cheshbon is because in New York State, if it's less than 6%, then I'm machshav it as wine. So when Asa said that's really a state standard, it's a statewide standard. Just a little bit, one could argue it's a minhag Medina, that it's not really together wine. You can sell it in a grocery store.
Right.
So Mamela, als minhag Medina, it's not considered a wine. So I prefer to use something with about 6%. But again, one should not overdo it. And the ikon one has to remember is the following: that mitzad adin, one only has to drink rov revis.
And how much is that?
So on the Friday night kais, even if you took the Chazon Ish's chumrah of using a kais of 5 ounces, would be 2.5 ounces. If you took Rav Moshe's share, so Friday night is just about 4.5 ounces, half of that. And the rest of the kaises, according to Rav Moshe, only 3 ounces. So all you need is 1.5 ounces. So to drink. So no one's going to get too drunk if from drinking 4 times 1.5 ounces or 1 time 2 ounces. If you make a cheshbon, then it's 6% alcohol. That's typically. So one drank 4 times a kais. So you drank 6. So you drank 6.5, 7 ounces. At 6%,
right.
You didn't even drink
that much.
You drank a fraction of an ounce. Right? If you had 7 ounces, it would be 10% alcohol. It would be 0.7 of an ounce. If you drink, since it's
So when people down the whole case, it's
So this story is like this. The Ikar, when the Shulchan Aruch, if you look carefully in the Achronim, the Machlokes is, do you have to drink the whole Revius, or you have to drink Rov Revius? There is a Shita, I believe of the Elio Rabbah, that held you have to drink the whole case, but that's certainly Bechlal, an extra chumrah.
right.
So Mamela, a person should not, take a case and take down the whole case and case after case if it's going to interfere with his ability to be Mekayim Mitzvah Salayla properly.
Should a person be mahader on not mevushal over mevushal?
A whole year it's brought in the Shulchan Aruch, there's a chumrah to have not mevushal, and particularly at the Leila Seder where we do everything super the mahadran. There are those achronim, I believe the Chok Yaakov was the one that states the fact that there's minhag of Klal Yisrael to the largest extent is not like the Shulchan Aruch and the Gra, and for Dovash and Tibula B'mashke on a wet food, most people don't wash. So there is a Shitas HaTosfos in Chulin that holds that way, and most of Klal Yisrael was noyeg like that. So Chok Yaakov addresses the fact, but at the Seder we see that we do wash before the Karpas. So he says it's no riot, and that's the din. It's a riot and a Pesach, we're mahadar and everything, so we do everything at the highest standard.
Yeah.
There comes from the fact, and this is in the Torah, the Torah's brisk, or available, I believe, spells it out, but it's in the Gemara. The Gemara says, if someone was an Eved and he went, Abdus L'cheres, what does he have to do? So the Gemara says, the whole Seder is Haido. That's what it is. And consequently, that's the pshat. There's a very strange, what the pasht is a difficult thesis. The question is that we don't eat matzah erev Pesach, so we should eat matzah l'te'ovel. So there's a shayla Tosis goes into that I might come to eat an achila gasa. Which achila gasa are we talking about? So Tosis says it's not the achila gasa when a person has eaten so much that he wants to vomit at the thought of food. But if he doesn't have a geschmack to eat it, he doesn't have a real desire to eat it. But if he'll eat it, he's all right with it. So Tosis says we have to avoid coming to that state. So the shayla is, why do we have that? If I'm going to be yotzet b'diavad, so what did I make gzeira not to eat on Erev Pesach for? If we're talking about the achila gasa where I'm not yotzet at all, so then I need a gzeira. But a gzeira that I won't be yotzet l'chatchila, where do we find such things? So I said that's the pshat. The pshat is, you won't do everything in life b'diavad, and b'diavad one is yotzet. But there's one thing you can't do b'diavad. You can't give thanks b'diavad.
No.
When you give thanks to someone, it has to be with a full heart. And when we come Pesach to thank the Rebbeinu Shalom, I'm fetching eating the matzah, which is to show my hafaras atayv to the Eibush that I missed it.
Mm-hmm. So
Mela, that's why in Pesach we try very much, to be machmer to the extent that we can. But if one has people of questionable background at the Seder, then what the chumrah is to use yayin mevushal, not to use yayin she'eino mevushal and get into the shaylas that can cause.
Do we have time, or should we?
We have enough time.
So I saw today something very interesting in one of our stores on the shelves. I wanted to ask the Rav this shayla. One of the stores put out this year, Baruch Hashem, like the Rav said about the publicity. someone in all these companies have good publicity people. So I saw a jar of horseradish that had, it said 13 kazesim. 13 kazesim in it. So there's a sticker that said, this has 13 kazesim. So my shayla was, my understanding was that let's see, let me get this right, that the maror is not the horseradish. Maror is really, maror is romaine, things like that. Is horseradish something that can be used for maror?
The Mesiris is that horseradish was used for maror, and the ikar of these things is Mesiris.
I know they said Baron used to have, I think they said he used to have...
he used regular lettuce, in fact.
He used iceberg.
Iceberg lettuce, yeah. These are Yonah Mesiris. There's no question in the Achronim that they held that one of the minim in the Mishnah is the Chrein. And we all know that the Chaykrim have problems with this,
right.
That they held that this is not a min that's indigenous to Eretz Yisrael. But the Maisa is Mukubal and the Achronim that you yotzi with it, and we follow the Mesiris in the Kabbalah.
So
Again,
kol
Kol echad lefi minhagu, one uses Maseres, but it's clear from the Mishnah that the Chazeres, the Chasa, the Roman lettuce is the lechatchila
Of Mara.
of Mara, yeah.
right. And Svara being that it's more, it's bitter, and horseradish is sharp,
Horseradish is sharp and not bitter.
not bitter. Yeah. A shaila that comes up every year, I think it's worth repeating. The question of chatzos, of the afikomen. What does the Rav hold about rushing the seder, getting the afikomen before chatzos, after chatzos, the tanai of the Avnei Nezer? I know it's a shaila which is a common shaila, but I always feel like I come to, personally, I can just give my personal feeling, is that you kind of start getting late and you start, should we not do it, should we do it, should we not, chinuch, the kids. I know it's best to start on time so you don't have these shilas, but let's say there's damning that happens that a person.
I think the ikar is that the seder should proceed in an oifen of ni'imus. That's, I think, the ikar.
But the evidence, one yoitze.
But the evidence was yaitse. Even if
After
one,
chatzos.
yes, you want definitely yaitse. That's clear. Do you need the Tanai of the Avnei Nezer? I don't want to go into it. Listeners can ask the Rabbanim to explain that the Briskerov says you don't need a Tanai, by the way.
You just eat the afikomen.
He says you eat before Chatzos and eat after. The last thing you eat is afikomen. That's all. If you're eating this, it doesn't create an iser achila. It's just the last thing you eat is the afikomen.
Uh-huh.
But I think that's the ikar is the seder should be b'neimus. I mean, how are we going to be mekayim them to saparbos the bincho ben bincho is asher salalti b'mitzrayim if it's not a pleasant experience?
So it's not, one doesn't have to.
As I said, if in the best of all worlds, tough, but we're not in the best of all worlds always, the children have the pshetlach to say, they prepared very much for the seder. We have to give them the due.
Is there in Ashram, I guess I'll ask Ashkafa Shaila. So many times people say, the kids come home with all the sheets, and is it Laman Misaper over Ben? Because the kids come with their shtickle tutter.
Listen, the ikar is that the experience that we create should impact upon them. And if they're pshetlach and that things get them involved, and it does, I think that's part of the Lamant Sapar Baz.
It's a chelik of the
It's a chelik, yes.
A chelik of the mitzvah.
Yeah.
Now
It's interesting, the Rambam, we know that the Gemara in Pesachim says, in Arvei Pesachim, that there were mechalik and goyism and kloyis, basically the candies of that time.
right.
So we look at that as being, that's very good pedagogical advice. In the world of education, they talk about motivations to get the students around. So it's brilliant educational methodology. But the Rambam tells us this is not coming from teachers' college. Mm-hmm. The Rambam says that to be mechalek and goyos and clothes and candies is a chelik of mitzvahs magid. The Rambam lists all the things in Perek Zayin, and at the end he says v'chulan, all of this is haggadah. And one of the things that he writes is to be mechalek and goyos and clothes, to give out candies to the children. So when there's a parent from the Rambam, is the Torah writes in one place ki yish'olcha v'ncho and olesku and the v'igata v'ncho. So apparently that we're supposed to arouse them to ask questions, and arousing them, getting them in the mood to ask the questions is a chelik of ki yish'olcha v'ncho. It's a chmamash a chelik of magid. It's not educational methodology.
So whatever gets the kids to be involved. That's,
yes,
okay.
That's the
Valid. That's important. Okay, last question. I guess we'll find. If someone has a pet that's on a strict diet and the pet food is chametz, and there's no other alternative, what do you do?
Basically, he cannot feed the pet chametz on Pesach. I don't know that the kuach nefesh for an animal is doicher alav in the Torah of vayiro vayimotzi. Consequently, the Shulchan Aruch writes, if you have animals, you have to be makta the animals to a guy, and let him get the food for them on Yom Tov. Don't give him the food. Let him get the food, and that's it. That's what you have to do. But that's a shayla that you should ask the Rav all the details of. But the Shulchan Aruch doesn't address this problem.
So just owning a pet and the pet has needs, that's not going to help you for...
It's going to create a problem for you, not resolve a problem.
Remember, last year I had the shayla, I don't know if I asked the Rav, but someone also asked me similarly. They said that baby food, the baby likes to eat, whether it's Gerber or beech nut, I forget which one is the kosher one, and the particular brand, the particular flavor, it has chametz.
So like he said, it's mamash also to give it. It's mamachila b'yadayim. It's mamash lelos achila. It's yisad deraisa to do it.
So, and then also there's Isra Bali Rabbi Matzah, right?
Yeah, even if it's small enough amount that it isn't, but it's certainly with the Rabbanon, it's also to have it for sure. At the very least, it's a chalila to do such a thing.
It is interesting. Many people don't put two and two together. That there are people out there don't put two and two together. That first of all, that the kid is also sensitive, like you said, like the Rav said, I'm also not allowed to do that. But that you have to look for these things, like the Rav said at the beginning. That person, you have to look at every single product and make sure, whatever it is, that is not doesn't have any chametz. Okay, I think we'll stop here. I don't know if there's anything else that the Rav wants to point out or comment on.
Rabbi say, at the end of the day, the Iker is Pesach, that it has to be mitoch simcha, and we should be very, very careful in how we conduct ourselves, that to make sure that it takes place mitoch simcha. And I think this is one of the points that Rav Schomburg Zatzal used to point out constantly, is to make sure that everything is mitoch simcha, and that way we'll be mekayim that which the Rebbeinu Shalom wants of us in the night of the Seder.
Right. We'll be zeicha that next year.
Everyone should be zeicha b'ez Hashem, kosher b'sameach, and we should be zeicha soon to bring the Korban Pesach.
Amen. Amen. Mitzvah, this
I actually did own a lamb last year.
You did on.
I owned a lamb, a Ben Shnosson. Yeah, I did own a lamb.
All right.
But the Mashiach didn't come. I had to, use it for other purposes.
I guess
but I did own a lamb.
If everybody wants to get a lamb, speak to Rabbi Welcher.
That's it. I have connections.
That's
I
good.
offered last year to people to buy kazaysim with my potential Korban Pesach.
All right. Amen. Put me in. Mr. Shem, this next year we'll be doing this for Yerushalayim. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Noah Morris from Teva Media who put this together for us. I also want to thank the whole staff here at Audubon Queens. On behalf of myself, Rabbi Welcher, Rabbi Shmuel Marcus, our president, and the board of the Audubon Queens, we'd like to wish everybody a Chag Kashrus Sameach. We'd also like to re-urge everybody when shopping in our stores and making sure that you're buying for Pesach, make sure that you check the labels and don't take anything for granted. Please go over the label again and again and again. Double check, triple check, pretend like you are parking on Main Street and you want to make sure that the signs are
more
correct,
than don't get you,
and that they don't get you for a ticket, whether it's with the parking or whether your stickers, everything, whatever it is. Please make sure to check and recheck. Again, this Sunday at Gizzo Queens Valley, we'll have at 11 o'clock our annual kashering for Pesach. Please make sure that when you bring your kelim in, the kelim are clean. They are not a ben yoimai. They haven't been used in 24 hours. Glass we will not kasher. Covers that have glass on it we won't kasher. Porcelain we won't kasher. Really bring your kiddush cups and your silverware and the pots that can fit into the big pots that we have. And Mitzvah Shem, we hope to see everybody with Rabbi Welcher's land in Yerushalayim, Amen. Everybody have a wonderful Yom Tov.